This is the Newsload.
Hello, Darren.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Are you at home right now?
Yes.
Fabulous. How's your Sunday going?
So far so good. Had a great weekend. Just did some shows, It's always good to have a Sunday after a weekend of shows. You can just relax.
So, I guess I'm just going to get right into the questions. You're
Sure.
a husband and a father, which is pretty much a unicorn in the comedy community.
Mm-hmm.
How are you managing? How do you have secrets that we can learn?
So I have 3 children, which is also a bigger difference than a lot of comedians. A lot of comics might have 1 or even up to 2. So I've got 3. It's just about managing your time. It's no different than any other job. When you have that kind of responsibilities, you got to manage your time. And really, I made a decision very early on in my career with my children that family had to come first and the road came second. So before I had children, I could be on the road up to 40, 45 weeks a year in various places and towns. Other than weekend warrior stuff, and when I say that, that means I may leave on a Thursday, come back Sunday. Like when you tour the East Coast or the West Coast, you have to go out for a week, 2 weeks, up to 6 weeks. My deal with my wife was that I cannot go longer than 2 weeks in a row, so 2 weekends, so no more than 10 days. I'd fly out on a Thursday and come back the following Sunday. And that was the only way I could financially make enough money to make it pay off and not get divorced. So that's the kind of common juggling act that I had to do for many years. Now my kids are a bit older, so I can go out a bit longer, but now I just don't want to because I'm 52. I'm not 21. I don't want to eat hot dogs on the road every day. I don't want to, sleep in crappy places. So my bar is a little higher. And so I only go out for as much time as I can handle it.
Yeah.
In the last 10 years, mental health has been a big factor in everyone's life. And the road is not a good place for mental health.
No, it's not. How do you stay positive on the road when sometimes there's so many dicks?
Well, first of all, I don't go for very long. Second of all, 95% of my work I book myself. So my show, my rules, I choose who I work with. In the beginning of your career, you don't have those kind of luxuries and you have to work with people that you don't like. All I say to those kind of comics is just kind of suck it up and try to get your own shows going as quickly as possible, because that's the only way that's going to change. There's always going to be dicks in this business. There's always going to be people that don't treat you well. You have to have a certain amount of self-respect. And until you grow a certain enough material confidence, you kind of have to, eat a bit of a shitty sandwich for a little while. But, it's possible to get out of that negativity and plot the course of your own career, which now due to the internet, comics are doing far quicker than anyone anytime else. My generation of comics, we sat around, we waited for the phone to ring, for an agency or a comedy club to call me and go, hey, let's do this week. Now it's not like that anymore. Now when people call me, I'm like, you know what? Right now, I'm booked up till March 2024. I've always done that. I've always booked 6 months ahead of the time. A lot of Canadian comics don't do that. And, I don't think it's the smartest thing to be going, where am I going to be next month? Hope it comes, hope something happens. I also didn't have that luxury because I got 3 other mouths to feed. I have to make money. I know it's a, part of the business people don't like to talk about, but you have to be financially rewarded or you won't stay in this business. I'm not doing this for laughs anymore. I'm not doing it to feel good about myself. This is my job.
Yeah. Yeah. And now I've known you for decades and
Sure.
Your stage presence is obviously extremely opposite from your normal day.
Yeah, off stage, of course.
Yeah, yeah. You're almost like your civilian hat.
Yes.
Do you find that people approach you almost more aggressively because of your vile character?
Yeah, I mean, like 10, 15 years ago, I was probably at my most offensive, if you want to use that word. And so, and aggressive. So those shows are crazy. A lot of crazy things happened. And I did some things that I even look back at now and I'm not happy about. But you know what? I wasn't a 52-year-old person with the eyes and the experience of that. So, for example, I'm touring with a comic right now. Her name is Lisa Baker. She's amazing. She's a killer. And we had some trouble up north at a show. and she handled it a certain way on stage. And we had a conversation afterwards. So I'm not talking out of school. Me and Lisa actually talked about this. And I said to her, Lisa, some people may say to you that you might not have handled that the best way you possibly could. And I'm telling you right now, 15 years ago, where you are in your career, that would have been me 15 years ago, because that's how long she's been in it. She's been in 17 years. I've been in 32 years. 17 years ago, I would have torched the planet way harder than you did, because I understand where you are. At age 52, I wouldn't deal with it that way anymore. Like last night, I was in a show, and within 4 minutes, an audience member actually yelled out, "You're an asshole." And I'm like, old Darren, talking to third person, that's not crazy. I would have stopped the show right there. I would have dealt with that person. I would have freaked out. It would have still been funny, but I would have put a fork in the road. Now my attitude was, you know what? You haven't even heard me do a bit that's coming in 5 minutes, and you think I'm offensive now. Buckle up. And I just kind of ignored it and kind of plowed through it. And then by the end of that show, the crowd's chanting my name and I'm doing an encore. And I'm not a comic that gets encores often. You try screaming at people and tell them why they're wrong and try to get applause breaks and encores and standing ovations. It doesn't happen often. At best, you're going to get is everyone had a great time. But I still get to push my point of view, and that's important. So that kind of aggression comes from almost that idea of passion. Like for me, all the bands that I love all come from a place of passion when it comes to music. I always use music as analogies. Every band I've ever loved was passionate about what they're screaming. And they don't even scream, but they're passionate. So that goes from like Midnight Oil and Political to the Indigo Girls, who also are very passionate about their causes. If you couldn't get two more extremes than, say, the Indigo Girls or the Headstones, but they're both passionate. So for me, my passion translates in aggression, and I'm in that moment. I'm not phoning it in. Have I phoned it in before? Yes, I have, because certain shows you have rules and you're just like, I'll take the money. But most shows I don't phone it in. So that's where that aggression comes from.
Do you find from 30 years ago that the audience is more offended or not?
I mean, I've always had to battle that problem from almost for 20 years. This idea that crowds are now more offensive or they're attacking comics more or this, and this. It's not that they're attacking comics more. It's just that we're able to show it through the internet, through camera videos, and those kinds of things. Comics have always been attacked or always been deemed offensive, and I've been doing it for 20 years. That whole Chris Rock thing, people are like, oh, oh my God. It's like, I've had death threats for years. I've had things thrown at me for years. I've had these things happen for decades, and I'm not the only one. And I'm not saying that so people go, oh, Darren, it must be so hard. This happened in the 70s and 80s. Comics, I know comics that have guns pulled on them in the 80s at shows. So these things have always happened. We're just talking about it more. And I think some people are standing up to it more and going, I don't want this to happen at shows anymore. Now, when it comes to offensive, I'm one of the few comics. I believe in freedom of speech. 100%. And I will fight for your right to have freedom of speech. But I do not believe in freedom of consequence. If somebody doesn't like something and they want to voice their opinion, they have the right to voice that opinion. So when someone doesn't like me and something I've done, that's fine. That's their opinion. But you can't be in a show and try to stop the show in front of a crowd that wants to hear my kind of jokes. That's the difference. You want to, go outside the venue and you want to protest and you want to put things on the internet that says Darren Frost is evil. That's your freedom of speech. In the venue, you paid your ticket price, you're interrupting the show, ain't going to happen.
Do your kids think you're funny?
No, they don't, and they don't really care about what I do for the most part. It's not that they're embarrassed by it, they just don't care. They don't see me as the guy jumping around screaming about, the things I scream about. My middle child, 16, he constantly says to me, are you going to go out tonight and call people the C word and make money? Is that what you're going to do? And I'm like, yeah, that's how I pay the rent. That's how we get to go to Disneyland. Every time Dad says motherfucker, we get to go somewhere. So, I mean, they don't care. And no kids normally do. Like, you talk to anyone famous, their kids don't care. Because they don't live in that world. They live 95% of the world of me going, will you pick up stuff in your room? Will you put the dishes away? Will you, that's the world they live in.
Yeah, the disciplinarian, not the rebel.
Right. Right. Contrary to most people, like I don't like bad language. Like I don't like my kids using bad language. I've been very strict about that until a certain age when they're old enough to understand what those words mean and the ramifications. So do I tell my 18-year-old not to swear? No, I don't. But do I tell him not to swear in front of my 13-year-old? Yes, I do. Yeah, I know he's 13. He hears it at school and he may say it at school, but inside the house, there's certain rules and certain ways you're supposed to handle yourself.
And there needs to be structure, and there needs to be,
yes,
even in, a free society where you're able to say your thoughts and your feelings and express yourself, you still need to consider it. Like, for instance, you mentioned a car accident joke or something in a London Yuck Yucks. It's on YouTube. I was
right.
watching you, and somebody threw a glass at you.
Yes.
Now, the ramifications of you offending them don't, validate violence or having, someone
Right.
assaulting you.
Right. I've always said that, and this is my problem with certain comedy club owners and other people. Violence is never acceptable. I don't care what a comedian says on stage. In my opinion, and this is my opinion, it should never resort to violence. Unless their words are very violent in nature and they're premeditating an action, like I'm going to jump off this stage and I'm going to fuck you up or I'm going to kill you or whatever, I don't believe in violence at all. Me and comics have this argument all the time. Some comics think other people should be allowed to be punched in the head for what they say. I don't. I think that anytime that you use violence, you're losing the word fight, and we might as well go back to caveman time. And I don't live in caveman time. We don't live in caveman time. It's not the way to handle a situation. And if you don't like a joke, just leave. I'm very adamant about the marketing behind what I do. So if you come into a show that's called Rank and Vile and it's X-rated and you don't want to hear a joke about something and you don't like it, that's on you. You did not do the research. If you did not do the research, that's not my problem. You don't go to a haunted house and complain that the bad man scared you. You just go and go, I don't like this. I want out. And you get out. But most people have a sense of entitlement now. Even though they have the internet, which is an amazing tool to figure out what they like and don't like, they don't always use it. And that's a problem. Or another thing that happens in comedy clubs, one person will book a show for a party of 6, and the other 5 people don't really know what they're getting. And I understand that. I have people walking out all the time. That's fine. Even if you can get your money back, good luck. But if you can, great, more power to you. Maybe you didn't choose tonight and this isn't for you. But just leave. Don't try to yell. Don't try to take control of the situation because you're not going to win. And this happens to clean comics, not only dirty comics. People drink, they get drunk, they don't hear exactly what's going on. They're listening through a filter and they decide, I'm going to take control of this situation because I'm a good person and good people stand up for other people. And they have no idea what they're talking about because they're drunk and they don't know what's going on.
Well, as a comedian, you are hired as a entertainer and practically a staff member of the club.
Yes.
And if a waitress or a bartender or a bouncer gets grabbed or something thrown at them, there are consequences. But for some reason, people feel that because we're telling jokes that we have the right to be hurt. And it's confusing to me.
Well, I mean, even that club in London, who's that person doesn't even is alive anymore. To her grave, she said, I deserved what I got. I still have staff members that used to work at that club that have sent me messages saying, I think you got what you deserved. And I'm like, we do not live in the same world. We do not live in the same world. Everybody rallied behind Chris Rock and all this and oh my God and that. And when that happened to me, very few comics rallied behind it because they didn't want to lose a gig. I get it. I'm not crying about it, but that's the reality of Canadian show business. Nobody wants to rock the boat and say the truth because it affects their work. And there's so little work in this country. Like in America, if I piss off a comedy club in Alabama, I can just go to Kentucky. I can go to North Carolina. And there's markets and millions of people I can play to. If I piss off one comedy club in Ontario, they all talk, my career can be severely affected. This is just the real consequences of speaking the truth in Canada. In Canada, they run away from controversy. if I was an American comic doing the kind of comedy I'm doing with the reputation I have and the trouble that I've had, I'd be celebrated far more than in Canada. I can't even get on a CBC show, an interview, when I've worked with CBC and done all their top shows. And, I'm still killing out there. I'm 52. I'm still killing. I can say that. I'm still killing. I don't care. But that's Canada for you. Now, I choose to live in Canada because I want a good life. I want a life with my kids. Life is more important to me than career. So these are the things that I have to accept. This is the barometer and the path that I have to choose, and I'm choosing it. But for young comics or anyone that wants to think of bigger, get out of this country. or utilize the internet, because the internet is far bigger than this country.
You bet.
Or number 3, accept what this is and try to run within it. And that's it. That's really your only 3 options.
Yeah. Yeah. What does your wife think of your comedy? Like, do you lie in bed together and giggle? Like, is it still...
Yeah, I mean, she wouldn't have married me if she didn't enjoy my comedy. Does she want to see it all the time? No, she doesn't. My wife only sees me live maybe once a year. And a lot of that time, it's because I'm working with another comic she wants to go and see. Like, she went and saw me recently with Lisa Baker because she's a Lisa Baker fan. So it's like she's going to see more her than me. And that's fine. I don't expect, to me, the one thing I always loved about Bon Jovi is that Bon Jovi married a woman who hated his music. And maybe I'm a narcissist, but I appreciate that. I didn't marry my wife because she was a super fan. I married my wife because I loved her and she loved me. Not that she was, oh, wow, you're a comic and, well, this is amazing. We get to travel together. Wasn't that? Because if you want longevity in a relationship, there's got to be a reality there and a basis of truth and equality. And you marry a super fan, I don't think you're going to get that.
Yeah.
And sometimes I need someone to go, you're wrong. You shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have said that joke. That joke is not right. You should apologize. And, it's hard getting a comic to apologize for their act.
Oh, yeah,
not easy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Are you romantic with her? Do you buy her flowers and bring her presents from the road?
I'm a semi-romantic, but she's not a super romantic person either. So we fit together well. I mean, we don't even buy presents for each other on birthdays or Christmas for the most part, because we celebrate each other. It's that old cliche, every other day than just those few. So we make sure that we have a lot of time with each other. We go on, date nights, that kind of thing. We try to make sure that we go on a lot of trips together without the kids, which I think is important. And we also go on a lot of vacations separately, which is also very important, not just for this business, but for relationships. Right now, my wife is in Vegas for 4 days. I'm not there. Who knows what she's doing? I don't care. Have fun. It's important to have friends outside of your relationship and have those moments that I'm not there for.
Absolutely. Being able to live your life and be a whole person, not just the better half.
Right. If I want to go do something Thursday, my first instinct is, I got to talk to my wife first and this. I know what she's doing on Thursday. I know she's fine if I go and want to do that. That's what a relationship should be. And especially in this business, because things happen and she's got to be able to bob and weave with it. Like, hey, Darren, you're going to be gone for, in the last week of May, first week of June, I'm in Winnipeg. Then 3 days later, I go to England for 10 days. Then I fly home. And the next day I go to Austin for 5 days. I mean, I'm not even here for the month of June.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations on all the global fan base. That's fantastic.
It's not so much global fan base. It's just you kind of get tired of playing the same venues. So, you just go to other places because you want to expand either your act or just your possibilities.
Yeah.
I've played in England before, decades ago. I'm just going back for some family things, Ben, piggybacking some shows. It's one of the great things about being a comic. I can always piggyback a show somewhere.
Yeah. Just pick up, because you don't have like a whole production and an entourage and a whole thing. It's like that's the joy of comedy. It's you, and you own the mic, you own the jokes. Who's a huge influence for you? Someone who inspires you?
So back in the early days of before I became a comedian, my inspirations were very simply 3 people. It was Woody Allen, Sam Kinison, and George Carlin. Those were the three. Actually, sorry, not Carlin. Sorry, before Carlin, Emo Phillips. Emo Phillips was a huge inspiration for me. So it's Woody Allen, Kinnison, and Emo, and a close fourth is Carlin. Those were the ones, and most people go, I don't get it, I don't see it. But obviously, the Kinnison one makes sense. The controversy, the anger, fine. The Woody Allen one, pre-controversy, is all about the fact that he could tell a story that didn't have to be real, but was still funny. So he could tell a 3-minute bit that was just a story that was hilarious. Most famously called The Moose. It's a great story. If you're a comedy historian, check it out. And then, Emo Phillips was, and still is, one of the best joke writers of all time. And so the importance of writing in all three of their acts are very important. When it comes to Kinnison, I don't like a lot of the stuff he did. Even as a 16-year-old boy, there was some stuff I didn't like, the misogyny, the sexism, but and the anti-gay stuff. But the stuff about religion, I thought was amazing, and other political views I gravitated towards. So those are three. Now who
delivery, the fact that he just was so powerful and able to, make it so exciting.
Yes. It's his way or the highway. And, sometimes a lot of people don't realize comedy can be very, very much like wrestling as well. When you interview enough comics, maybe they'll bring up wrestling, but there's an element of wrestling to comedy as well. Meaning you have the people that want, them to like you, or you got, that. And then you have the bad guys that are there being like, no, you're going to laugh at this, even though you don't want to. And there's a little element of that with my act. And I understand that. And that's why, like you said, off stage is different than on stage. It's no different than wrestling. I'm playing a character, a heightened version of myself. Yes. But do I go into like a government agency and talk to the way I do on stage with people? Of course I don't. But on stage, you're paying for that passion and delivery system. Now, when you talk about currently who influences me the most, it generally is young comics. And then a couple veterans that are still, killing it. Of course, Kenny Robinson. I still consider to be one of the best comics that ever did stand-up comedy in this country and is still working and still writing new material. And then you have young comics. Like you have comics like, I just worked with a guy named Andrew Barr last night. I haven't seen him in a couple of years. He ripped it up. When it comes to a middle, a lot of times the middle just does okay. And I just take the baton and I run with it and I'm easily able to follow it. A lot of comics like a soft middle. I don't. I want someone that is killing it and is going to make it hard for me. And that's what this guy did. He killed it. The crowd loved him. And I'm sure there was people in that audience that thought he was funnier than me. And I'm okay with that because on any given Sunday, someone is the best comic on the show. So the guy like Andrew Barr, a guy at Ottawa, Bobby Knuff. You've got, Kathleen McGee out west. You have in England, Bobby Mayer. You have a guy in New York called John Moses, Aaron Berg. I mean, I spout all these names for people to even just go and Google these people because comedy is so free now and able to be consumed. There's no reason why you can't. You're stuck in your car, you're stuck on a train, whatever. Go check them out because they're absolutely hysterical.
Wonderful. Well, Darren, I can't thank you enough for your time. I think you are, the lovable villain and the one who jumps and sticks up for us, victims and girls who have been, had some stuff thrown at us and terrible gossip about us, and you come to our rescue, and that's what I appreciate about you.
Well, there's no doubt about it. Comedy is a boys' club. It was for decades. And most of my comedian friends, outside of two, Mark Walker and Kenny Robinson, and a couple others, James Cunningham, 95% of the people I gravitate towards are the female comics, or the LGBTQ comics. Any of the underdogs. I'm an underdog. Those comics are underdogs in this business. Now, thanks to the internet and some people waking up in the industry, it's a much more diverse lineups. I never liked going to a show and it being 8 white dudes. I never liked that. Nobody likes that. I don't want to go see a movie with just 100 white people in it, and a white dudes. Nobody wants that. But for some reason, comedy took a long time before that kind of opened up. And now we're seeing a resurgence in the ability for other underdogs to take advantage of the internet. And this is why I stress the internet so much for people on social media, that it's a game changer and it levels the field. So there's no difference between me, you, and 3 other comics that are trying to make it. And that's what we needed. And so I've always wanted to support the underdogs. It didn't matter what their makeup was. If you're an underdog, I try to support you. That's why I still go to open mic nights. And if I see a comic that's funny, even if they didn't do well, I go up and I go, don't quit. This is just not your crowd. You will find your crowd. The power of the internet will let you find your crowd. You don't need to make everyone happy. You only need to find 5% of that crowd that finds you great, and just keep building on that.
Amazing. Such good advice. I can't wait to see you again in person. And can you just say one more thing for me? If you
Sure,
can
okay.
say it loud, say it proud. I love Newsload.
Okay, all right. I love Newsload, and so should you.
Thank you, Darren. I hope you have an amazing day.
Cheers, you too. Thank you.
Bye.
This is the Newsload.